Welcome, everyone. We're delighted to have participants from various parts of the globe, whether you're joining us live or later on. Thank you for being with us for another session of the Spiritism Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation, held every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It is my pleasure to host this talk with Kirsten DeMelo, who will be speaking on the topic, A Toolbox for Healing and Victory. Let's all give Kirsten a very warm welcome. And before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce her. Kirsten DeMelo is an active board member at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. She was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to Spiritist parents and was part of the Spiritist Society of Philadelphia before moving to Maryland in 2011. She has participated in the Spiritist Medical Congress and multiple Spiritist symposiums. Professionally, she is a registered nurse with a Bachelor of Science degree with experience in critical care, case management, and utilization management. Please feel free to send your questions at any time during the presentation using the chat window. Kirsten has set aside time at the end to address your comments and questions. Kirsten, great to see you, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you to the United States Spiritist Federation for this beautiful opportunity. And what a privilege on such a day. We are humbled by it because today is April 18th of all days. So it is a day to be remembered. It is a day to be celebrated. It is the anniversary of the launch of the Spirits book. So almost 170 years, almost 169. So today, in homage of all that hard work that was put into this, we dedicate this talk today to all the minds that went into doing this work and also all the minds that need this comfort, this enlightenment, this reprieve from our struggles in life. Well, who wouldn't love a toolbox? If we could go and purchase it on Amazon, I'm pretty sure it would sell out very quickly if there was a toolbox, a literal toolbox for healing and victory. Well, there kind of is. There kind of is. We have lots of literature and enriched information we can take in and utilize in our day to day. And we wanted to put it in a very concrete, practical, and not just a theoretical, abstract idea we can discuss necessarily. But before we jump into that, let us just level set by reminding ourselves who we are, what we are, and most of us know that already. We are a spirit having this human experience. And in the Spirit's book, they share with us the body is only the envelope. The soul is the essential being, the primary cause, the principle of all things. If we see an effect, we must conclude there is a cause. If the effect is intelligent, the cause must be intelligent. Naturally, that makes sense. And of course, there's some historical points as to when we talk about healing and victory over struggles. Largely, when we think of these things, we think of emotional struggles, because ultimately, when it gets down to it, those are some of the issues that humanity at large struggles with: interpersonal relationships, family relationships, and also the relationship we have with ourselves, with our own emotions, with our own comings and goings, and the memories that we hold from this life, previous life, and what have you. So, we wanted to touch on this idea because the book that we're going to be pulling from today is a book that's not yet in English. It's called, if it were to be translated English, it would be called Victory Over Depression, psychographed by Givaldo Franco by the spirit Joanna DeAngelis. And in this book, they talk about depression. And we're going to talk about some historical points, how depression has always existed, although sometimes being used as a different word, melancholy throughout the ages, And oftentimes, many centuries ago, it was related, at least in the medical community many ages ago, dealing with the four humors of the body. And it wasn't until much later that depression came around and was understood as something much more concrete and more serious. And nowadays, anyone can experience depressive episodes. We can go through hard times, we can experience things that are really unpleasant and that put us in a mood or a sad state. But there is a difference, just for our awareness, between having a depressive disorder and depression. Anyone can experience sadness, it's a part of life, but when it becomes pathological, it does become a disorder, as shared in the DSM-IV. You can read about it. Depression is a broad term. It can describe a temporary mood. Again, while a depressive disorder is a persistent medical condition that does require medical attention. Globally, we've seen just some stats. We've seen an increase in depression. We've seen an increase across the globe in these disorders for, you could say, a variety of reasons. And here are the stats. It's only grown. And we would think that it wouldn't be so with all of the technology and all the research and information we have. And you could even make a case to say, well, maybe we're better apt at identifying it. And possibly that's some of it. And also, the reality is that it's sort of a pandemic. It's an epidemic that we have in our society that must be addressed, that must be dealt with, before it becomes a disorder, because everything leads up to that. It's not just one day I wake up and I have a disorder. It's a gradual over time builds up depending upon our thought patterns, our behaviors, and the way we manage our mental hygiene, which we're going to talk about today. And we know in the Spirit's book, this idea of sadness has existed throughout history. And in the Spirit's book, chapter 5, the question's asked, do we know why a vague sadness sometimes weighs upon our hearts and makes we find our life so bitter? And the Spirits tell us, it's your spirit which aspires to happiness and freedom, bound to the body that serves as its prison, exhausts itself in vain to escape. However, seeing that such efforts are useless, it falls into despondency. So we, by the very nature of who we are, we desire to be free. And we also have that remembrance, that emotional memory, that at some point in time, perhaps in a different place in time, perhaps in the spirit realm or in a different life, we were once happy and free, but now we are bound in this physical body and we must endure. And in the Spirit's book, question 922, they ask, earthly happiness is relative to the position of each person, and what might suffice for the happiness of one would be misfortune for another. Is there nevertheless a common standard of happiness for all? So they answer, for material existence, it's the possession of all that is necessary. But for the moral life, it is a good conscience and faith in the future. Truly, the peace in our soul is what makes us feel rich, which makes us feel whole, and not necessarily having tons of physical and material things at our fingertips. That won't necessarily bring us that same fulfillment. And there's a great book that's already in English called Plenitude, also by the same medium, Givaldo Franco, by Joanna DeAngelis, that talks about this idea of understanding what is plenitude, that feeling of wholeness within. And it's not something that's achieved by going out to the store and buying all the latest spring clothing line or fashion sense or getting the latest model car or what have you. It's not. If that were the case, then technically all of the celebrities and stars in this world, who and all the very wealthy people, shouldn't have any emotional issues whatsoever. But we know that's not the case. Because why? Because it's about what's inside of us, what's in our inner world, and how are we managing that? How are we managing the ins and outs? So when we start off our journey into becoming a better person, we often, I like to think, have a set of goals, or we have a plan of attack, if you will, a plan to how to accomplish these things. And also, if I fall short, what will I do on those days where I feel lazy or I feel like I just don't want to? We have to have something we can pull from our heart, from our souls, out of this toolbox to utilize. And so that's why we use this idea of the toolbox, because we can carry this proverbial toolbox with us day in and day out. And we can carry it in our minds. We can actually write this down as a reminder of how to manage our own selves. And truly, at the end of the day, to have victory over ourselves, over our shortcomings. Now, in this particular book, in the final chapters of this book, Victory Over Depression, Joanna goes into some practical and actionable spiritual medications. And she emphasizes that while the body needs medicine, the spirit needs movement. We need purpose, and we need a change in our vibrational fields. Joanna often says a lot of our problems is a problem of fixation. We are fixated on a problem, on a situation, and we ruminate and we stay in this loop. This happens with so many people, so many cases, whether we're dealing with guilt or any other stifling emotion that becomes a disorder, where it becomes too much. Because guilt has its place for recognition in our lives when we do something wrong. But anytime we ruminate and we stay fixated, it becomes a problem. We can't move on. So here are some of the more important, specific spiritual exercises and practices that she recommends. And we highly recommend that if you have a paper and pen, or you can take your cell phone and screenshot the next 5 things that she talks about in this book. It makes a world of a difference in our inner world. If we can practice and make these things a part of our everyday lives, because you will begin to see and feel the difference. And we have to preface this by saying that there will be days, much like when you start a gym routine and you're in the beginning, or you're in the middle, or you're in that maintenance mode. There are days where you will not want to go to the gym. There will be days where you don't feel like it. There will be reasons around you why you don't feel like it. There will be legitimate reasons, and you name them. There's thousands of them. Struggles at work, family, children, spouses. There's a whole vast array of reasons. But one thing we must remember: discipline over emotion. There's a reason why Emmanuel told Chico Xavier, discipline 3 times. Discipline. We must be disciplined with this. Our emotions, yes, are important, and we must work on them, and this is what this toolbox is. But when we resign ourselves and finally decide to work on ourselves, we must be disciplined with this behavior, in as much as we are disciplined in taking our allergy medicine around allergy season, or taking any other medication. If you don't take it diligently, it's not going to be as effective. So Let's jump right into it. One of the first things she talks about is the discipline of thought surveillance. Joanna suggests that the most critical exercise in the active monitoring of our inner or internal monologue. We all have an internal monologue. If you don't, or I say the vast majority of us have an internal monologue, there are some rare people that do not have it. But as a general whole, we have an internal monologue and or the ways in which we speak to ourselves, unconsciously or consciously. And I'll give you an example what this is. This can be when we are getting ready in the morning for work or what have you, and we take a quick glance in the mirror and we might think, oh gosh, I look terrible. Or we're rushing or we do something and we stub our toe and we go, oh gosh, I'm so silly. I'm so dumb. Why did I stub my toe in the same spot every day? Why do I always do that? Or while we're at work and we mess up an Excel spreadsheet, or our meeting goes bad, or what have you, because you misspoke. And we have this internal dialogue with ourselves, with monologue, where it's like, man, why do I do that? I'm so dumb. That internal monologue must be identified. We must get to know what ours is so we can change it. And that is a part of thought surveillance. And so the exercise is this. Throughout the day, practice mental screening. When a depressive or self-deprecating thought arises, like, I'm useless, I can't believe I did this, I'm so stupid, stop and consciously replace it with a constructive affirmation or a short prayer. In the beginning, when you do this, it might feel funny. It might feel odd to do it, but stick with it. And you're also going to feel like, wow, this is a lot of work, more than I anticipated. Yeah, it is. Because once you draw light to something that you weren't otherwise aware of, you begin to realize some negative thought patterns that we've had. Some are subtle, some are more apparent and loud. Some aren't so bad. Some instances are better than others. But the point is to have this thought surveillance, this mental screening, being self-aware of the thoughts I am cultivating in my mind. And we might think, sure, sometimes I have a bad thought and I pray and I restabilize myself. Great, if we can always do that. But I do want to draw your attention to a case that we spoke of before, about a man named Ambrosia. And I'm completely blanking, but it will come to me what book it is. It will come to me, folks. But there's a case study in one of the books by Manuel Fernando Miranda. I believe it's Torments of Obsession. And they speak of this spirit. And I won't go into the whole long case because it's a really long, detailed case that they speak of in this book. But one particular thing I wanted to draw attention to. When Mr. Ambrosia passes away, and he's in the spirit realm for many years, and he's rescued, one of the many interventions that they do with him is this thing where they have to remove this dark, thick, brown energy that is stuck to him. And when Filomena de Miranda is observing it, he says, well, what is that? To the mentors. And they say, that is all the negative thought patterns and sort of like a broken record that's on repeat, and it's stuck to him. And it's his own. And it's not an external spirit that's obsessing him. It's his own self-obsession, if you will, that he created. This negativity that he created a cloud around him. And the mechanism that they had to utilize to remove it is equally just as fascinating. And I won't go into that. The book is in Portuguese, soon to be in English. If you haven't read the book, go and read it. It's phenomenal. But the point is that we can create this negative, sticky, spiritual cloud of ickiness when we're not careful of our thoughts. Because when we think a thought, because it's not concrete, it's not something physical and tangible we hold in our hand, we tend not to give it the same value as if I were to be holding something. But we do need to give it that value because it is real. And we create our own spiritual atmosphere around us, good or bad, or somewhere in between. This thought surveillance is pivotal and imperative on any spiritual or well-being, mental health, well-being walk, whatever you want to call it. This should be a part of our everyday life. If we're looking for practical ways to find plenitude, to find our way back home, this is where we start. And the purpose: to prevent mental parasites or obsessive influences from latching onto low frequency thoughts. So this cloud invites lower entities to come and party with us, and they can latch on and they identify us. We don't want that. We don't want that. That's a no. This is something we should be aware of. We don't see it with our physical eyes unless you have some extremely extensive mediumship. So we don't see it with our eyes. We don't think that it exists, or we don't give it much credence because you can't see it. It's different when in the summertime, I know that if I stay outside too long without putting on sunscreen, I'm going to get dark and might get burned. That is a physical, it's a reaction. I know that it's real, it's happening. So I will be proactive. But because it doesn't affect us right here and now, we might not feel the effects right away. We have a tendency to not address it. But let this be a reminder that it's real, that it is so real in our lives. So, second tool in our toolbox. And you might think, Kirsten, everybody knows about prayer. Therapeutic prayer and fluid therapy. And Joanna presents prayer as a method of mental hygiene rather than just a religious ritual. Prayer is a part of our mental hygiene. In the Spirit's book, they talk about the law of worship. It's one of the first laws, I believe. The third part of the Spirit's book is the law of worship. And prayer is a part of that. Stopping to give thanks to God, to lift and elevate our minds up to God. But does God need us to pray? Does God need our prayers? No. We need our prayers. We need to take the time to elevate our mind, our vibrations. We need those moments of renewal and recharge because the level that we're at and the planet that we're living on. If we think about every day I shower, every day I brush my teeth, I wash my face, I wash my hair, I see a dentist to make sure everything's really clean. I go to my medical professionals, I get my lab work done, make sure that I'm doing good, that my eating is good, it's clean eating, I'm not putting into my body anything negative. But again, with the abstract, not tangible things, we don't think of our thoughts as being something that we need to be cleansing, cleaning. But prayer is a form of mental hygiene. You know, when after you eat a good steak or chicken or food in general, and you have to go and floss, this is mental hygiene. This is flossing, if you will, for our spirit, for all intents and purposes. This is the hygiene we need to practice day in and day out. Once we begin to make it a habit, it's not going to feel like a burden because it will become second nature for us to do it. So the exercise. Establishing a daily routine of elevated thought. This involves sitting in silence for 10 to 15 minutes to synchronize your breathing with a prayer of gratitude or request for inner strength. We can all do this, anyone, anytime, anywhere. It can be super short. You just take the time out. It could be first thing in the morning as a routine. You pray, express gratitude, and you set the tone for the day. But we might also need to do this throughout our day. When things are happening, life can be chaotic. We can get phone calls and hear about things on the news that really disturb us. So we need to take a moment, step away, and take this moment to elevate our thoughts and pray and connect. And request this inner strength. And we know in the Spirit's book, they tell us when we pray, 3 things happen. We receive courage, we receive patience and resignation. So we need that CPR, those momentary CPR moments to reinvigorate ourselves, reinvigorate our minds. And she also recommends fluid therapy. Recommends drinking fluidified water that has been the subject of prayer or magnetized with positive energy as a physical, spiritual support for the nervous system. For those who attend a Spiritist center, you might be familiar with this. It is nothing more than, let's just say, some spring water or filtered water. And you can do this at home. You can pray over the water, or when you're just praying in the morning, or whatever your routine is, and you have some water next to you, and you pray, and you ask for it also to be blessed. And when you drink it with intention. Water is so important, just plain old-fashioned water. There's a plethora on the market of flavored waters. Those are great. But we will say, just pure water. It's so important for our bodies to stay hydrated. And we've learned through the books of Andrea Louise that water is often utilized by the higher spirits. And there's a case in Action and Reaction where there's a mother who's extremely dirt poor, as the saying goes, and she's ill, or her child is ill, and there's no means of, and the good spirits are watching her, and they're trying to find a way, see if there's anyone in the area that could bring her something to help her, but there's nothing but a little glass of water. And so they inspire the mother to drink it as well as for the child, and the spirits magnetize and bless that water, and that brings some renewal for that family. So it's amazing. Never underestimate the power and blessing of what water can bring to our lives. And fluid therapy. Tool number 3, the therapy of labor. I bet we didn't think about this before. The therapy of labor. We're going to share why this is important. The very act of movement of our body is imperative. We learn this whenever we're studying psychology, whenever we are studying wellness and well-being, that the mere act of movement, whether it's through yoga or stretching, helps us to feel better. It moves energy. It helps with the catecholamines, which is just a fancy word to say all those good hormones in our bodies that can be released. We need movement. But beyond movement, we need movement with purpose. That's beyond just helping ourselves. And Joanna shares one of her strongest recommendations is to avoid mental idleness, which she calls a workshop for shadows. So the opposite of this would be when we feel stuck, we're stuck in our room, we're stuck in our home even, and not wanting to go anywhere or move or do anything. This is very detrimental. If you're ever in a funk, or if you have a actual clinical disorder, depression or otherwise, it's so important for us to experience movement and this therapy of labor. She says to assign yourself small, useful tasks, even on days when motivation is zero. This could be as simple as organizing a drawer or tending to a plant. Do not be idle. As the saying goes, idle hands are the devil's playground. When we sit and do nothing, that can be quite dangerous. It is good to have tasks for us to do, ones that are positive. Organizing a closet, tending to your garden outside, whatever it is, cleaning your car, cleaning your room. These things are super important for us so we don't get stuck in that muck, in that heaviness that we sometimes have unconsciously created around ourselves. And we will add that sunshine is super important. Open up your windows. Open up your shades. Let the sun shine in. We've learned through various different Spiritist books and literature that the rays of the sun can help to dissipate negative vibrations. So do that. There's a reason why the great and late Florence Nightingale, in her book that was now famously read and studied by nursing students and nurses across the world, where she says how important it is to open up windows, to let in fresh air, especially for those who are sick, but even for us who aren't apparently sick. Open the windows, open the shades, open the curtains, and let that light come in. Physical movements help unstick that heavy mental energy of depression. Movement is so important. And if you have a friend that could be experiencing a difficult time in their life, or if you have a child, whether that child is 18 or older or 15 or whatever the age they are, if they're living with you or not, and they're going through a hard time, don't allow them just to sit in their room. Don't go in their room and join them in their depressive state. Encourage them to come out. Let's go for a walk. Let's go enjoy nature. Let's do something productive. Which, of course, leads us to this understanding of charity. We talk about labor and doing things. Movement is important, but movement with purpose and a goal beyond ourselves is even more vital in this process of self-illumination, of self-healing, and of achieving plenitude. Joanna argues that the exit door from the pain of the self is through the pain of the other. Isn't that beautiful? The exit door from the pain of the self is through the pain of the other. It's beautiful because when we share our burdens become lighter, and so do the burdens of others. We sometimes discount how important it is for us to be social beings, to interact with others in a positive way, and to seek out ways in which we can help others, especially when we are going through our own hardships, to come out of ourselves and think about what's going on with my neighbor. Yes, I'm going through a hard time. I have my own struggles. But then you see your neighbor who breaks their leg and they have a large family. So you go over and either you can ask, hey, can I help you at all? I see that you broke your leg. Or maybe it's just bringing them some groceries or bringing them a home-cooked meal. It is that act of coming out of ourselves, again, coming out of that fixation. Because what happens when we are going through tumultuous things, when we are enduring pain, physical or emotional? It's all encompassing for us. It weighs us down. And we need to have a tool in our toolbox to get out of that, to get out of ourselves and think of someone else. That helps us tremendously. It's charity as a medicine. So the exercise. Commit to one disinterested act of kindness or service to someone else each week. And by shifting the focus from my suffering to how I can help, the psychological weight of the ego begins to lift. I'm moving the fixation. I'm changing perspectives. And this can be something so small because we live in a society. We live amongst others. We don't have to wait for opportunities to make grand gestures. These can be small things that we choose to do every day. Walking through your neighborhood. Your neighbor left their trash can out from the night before when the trash man came. Maybe they're a little bit elderly, or maybe they're just a super busy people that they're always working and they have so much going on. You go and you bring their trash receptacle back for them. And they're so grateful to you for that. Sometimes they may not notice it. Sometimes they definitely will and say, hey, did you do that? Thank you so much. My life is so crazy sometimes. And when we are on the receiving end of that, and when we feel like something so small and seemingly insignificant is recognized by a neighbor, makes us feel seen, makes us feel valuable. So not only is the receiver receiving that blessing, we in turn also receive that blessing, that we're being useful. And these are small things we could do every day. Anyone and everyone can do this. And there's a quote, she says, love is the supreme medication. Service to others is the most efficient antidepressant known to man. It's almost impossible to be depressed when you are helping other people because your mind isn't focused on it, focusing on helping others, focusing on uplifting others, solving other people's issues. And when we do that, we're able to open up our mental psychosphere and receive blessings. And that is so important in this therapeutic journey that we utilize this tool as well. Charity as medicine is very real, and it's tangible because it's something that we can do, we can practice, and we can actually see. But also don't forget, charity as medicine can also look like, let me not judge my neighbor. Let me not judge that person at the grocery store. Let me not, when in traffic, let me allow someone to go ahead of me in traffic. How many times are we driving in traffic and we see someone else's turn signal on and we speed up? Why do we do that? Make a mental effort to slow down a little bit. Let the other person go. Because when that person goes, hey, thanks, from afar, that's a blessing they're sending your way. They're sending you good vibrations. And I don't know about you, but I could use all the blessings I can get. It's something small. It might seem insignificant, but it's powerful. We'll never forget, back when we used to work in the ICU, we worked night shift. And we had a really particularly sad and emotionally draining shift. And in the morning, we were leaving the hospital, and there's always people coming and going, not even paying attention to one another. And I was really in my own thoughts that morning, leaving the hospital, and just feeling that weight. As I'm leaving and I'm walking in the parking lot, I see this woman, and she's walking by me, and this has been 15 years ago, and I've never forgotten her. She had the warmest, brightest smile. There was something about her energy. And when she saw me, she greeted me with what felt like a hug. And she just said, "Good morning. Have a great day." And that gave me a boost, a little jolt of energy. And I thought, oh, I felt it. And then I also felt gratitude for someone in that moment acknowledging my existence because I was lost in my thoughts. And then it brought me back to the present to say, you know what? I'm grateful that I was here to serve and be of use, albeit under sad circumstances. So charity can look like a smile. Charity can be, even when we aren't naturally extroverted. Smile and say hello to people, genuinely wishing them well. And the fifth, she says, spiritual study and mental nutrition. We just recently saw a nutritionist for the first time in many years, and they go through all the list of the things you should eat in your diet and all these things, and that makes sense. Everyone's aware of that. Most folks have an idea of fruits and vegetables, proteins and things of that nature, and all those things that are important for us to eat on a daily basis. But how cognizant are we of the mental nutrition day in, day out? Joanna says, just as the body needs healthy food, the mind needs healthy impressions. The exercise is replace toxic media, violent news, depressing movies, or gossip, with edifying reading. She suggests reading a few pages of spiritual philosophy like the Gospel According to Spiritism or any other spiritually uplifting book before bed to set a calm tone for the subconscious during sleep. And I would even add, during the day. Nowadays, with modern technology, we have things like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We can listen to it on the go when we're going for a walk, when we're at the gym, when we're in between meetings. Listen to things that are uplifting and positive. Nowadays, there are so many audiobooks we can listen to. Not taking away from actual reading of books, which has its own benefits of physically holding a book. There's something beautiful about that. But being aware of what we are feeding our minds. What am I feeding my mind? Take an inventory of what you watch and listen to, and see how much of those things are there to spiritually uplift you, help you think better, more positively, and deeper, and connect with God. That's not saying that we should disconnect from the world, never watch the news, don't know what's going on across the globe. It's not that. But have enough of a routine and a balance where we are giving ourselves enough spiritual nutrients and not simply consuming constantly toxic, negative news or media or books or movies or music. Let us be mindful and make it a habit on a daily basis to read uplifting things, to listen to uplifting things. We've never had it easier than what we do now. It's at our fingertips. And it's important, especially before we go to sleep, to nourish the subconscious with calm and constructive impressions. So much of how we behave and what drives us is in our subconscious. It's that iceberg below the water. And until we learn all about ourselves and shed a light on that shadow, we will continue to be led by those parts of ourselves. So through these listenings of positive podcasts and uplifting videos and music and news and all those things help every aspect of our being, even those parts of us that are within our subconscious or unconscious mind, believe it or not. But it does. These are 5 things. They may look different practiced by everyone because everyone is different. Some might like yoga and journaling. Some may just like a daily inner dialogue with God. However it looks, utilizing these 5 things will make our lives better, will help us on the journey to plenitude, and can help us overcome our own negative tendencies, our own negative links that we've created that we're unaware of, whether it's with negative energies or entities. But these are really important ways for us to be victorious in life. If we want to be victorious, if you don't want to be victorious in life, then these things aren't for you. But we say that in jest because everybody wants to be victorious in life. Everyone wants to be genuinely happy. If you were to poll the audience or the people, there won't be a single person who does not want to be happy, to feel at peace, to feel joy. Everybody wants that and desires that. We just don't know how to always go about it. Or we have some bad habits that we've had over time that we just need correcting. We need to redirect our thoughts and our behaviors to something more positive. And in the Spirit's book, they bring us some other understandings. And one of those questions is the following: does the duration of punishments always depend on the Spirit's own will, or are there punishments that are imposed on it for a specific length of time? St. Louis tells us there are punishments that can be imposed on for a specific length of time, but God, who wills only the good for God's creatures, always welcomes its repentance. The Spirit's desire to improve is never fruitless. And this is an imperative. that we all have is a desire to be better than what we were before. And to know that this too shall pass. Whatever we're going through, both negative and positive, this too shall pass. But it's mainly the negative experiences, the sadness, the hardships that we tend to feel like will last forever. They will not. And if we use every opportunity for an opportunity of growth and asking ourselves, what can I learn from this? It will also help us to get unstuck. And the great Paul the Apostle in the Spirit's book shares with us, truly I say to you, stop comparing eternity in terms of the good, which is the essence of the Creator, with evil, which is the essence of the creature. An approach that ends up creating unjustified penalties. Rather, affirm the gradual diminution of punishments and penalties through the successive reincarnations, and you will consecrate divine unity through reason and sentiment. So let us focus on the positive, on the good. Let us focus our eyes on the Creator, on the Almighty. And as is said before, let us take up our cross and bear it. Let us walk. Let us begin. And let us not be scared. Although we still may be scared while we're doing it, but have courage. Courage doesn't mean that fear goes away. Courage means we have the strength and that we make the effort to put our first foot forward, and then another, and then another, and then another. And then with discipline, we keep going. So today's take-home message. View all health conditions as a call for transformation, not a call for self-judgment, not a call for self-pity. Reframe it. Any health condition that we are experiencing is merely a call for transformation of our own self. It's taking the positive perspective. Take personal responsibility and ethical action. We have agency over ourselves. It's one of the most beautiful blessings God has given to us. We can change our own lives, and we have that responsibility. We often equate this with guilt. We end up feeling guilty. But Spiritism isn't here to help us to feel enslaved by our own negative tendencies. It's here to remove the shackles, to help us to remove those shackles, and to do the inner work so we never create more shackles for ourselves. Utilize faith and prayer as rational tools. Without that connection to God, without that faith and use of prayer, our lives are a lot more harder than what they need to be. And imagine how challenging things are, and you already utilizing your faith and prayer, how much more challenging it would be if you weren't utilizing these things. Heal through service and charity. Always make it a part of who we are to serve others in small ways. You can have a day, a month, a week where you go and you practice charity at a soup kitchen or whatever it is. But don't take away from the importance of the day-to-day moments of charity that we can practice. Cultivating joy and gratitude daily. Did you know that joy is a choice? It's a choice. We can experience pain and still choose joy. It seems like that can't be. How is that possible? But it is. Joanna tells us. Cultivating joy is a choice. Gratitude daily, finding those moments day in and day out. And she reminds us, suffering is not a punishment, but a tool for spiritual education. It's a call for transformation for all of us every day of our lives and for the rest of our existence. Something for us to take home, something for us to think about, reflect on today, and how blessed we are to have this knowledge, this information, and it's free. So we encourage you, friends, to find joy, to find gratitude, to connect with your divine creator, your guardian angel, your spirit guide, and to practice these mental hygiene. Do not be stagnant. Practice charity. And most of all, have compassion and forgiveness for yourself and for others. Thank you, dear friends, for listening thus far. And I would like to turn it back over to Peter.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for your insightful reflections. I look forward to seeing Joanna DeAngelis' book Victory when it becomes available.
Right?
So please stay with us for the Q&A session, which will begin shortly after a few announcements. We invite you to follow us on our social media channels to stay updated on upcoming events and activities. Next, don't forget to visit the USSF bookstore at spiritistbooks.us, where you'll find a wide selection of Spiritist books, including several exciting new releases. I just got my copy of Kardec's posthumous works, which is available for the first time in English. Next, if you work with Spiritist youth or are interested in educational resources, be sure to explore Family, Youth, and Children Spiritist Education, otherwise known as FIXIE. Please visit the FIXIE website at spiritismkids.us, where you'll find excellent materials and ideas for youth educators. And take a moment to check out the Be My Hope app, which offers inspiring daily messages to uplift your spirit. It's available for free on both the App Store and Google Play. Let's now turn our attention to your comments and questions. There is still time to send yours, so please feel free to share your thoughts. Okay, let's see what we got. From the U.S. Spiritist Federation. It seems that many of our frustrations with ourselves are self-imposed. Is that true?
Absolutely. We are oftentimes, as they say, our own worst enemy. And we create, and about 50%, I think the gospel says, of a lot of our own issues is brought on by ourselves. So, absolutely. That's why it's important to have that mental hygiene, that self awareness.
Okay, thank you. Next question. This is from the International Spiritist Council. In what way can depression be related to past experiences or atonements?
Hmm. In many ways, we carry a baggage with us. Whatever we do is never forgotten. Although we may have this forgetfulness of the past, but Joanna DeAngelis tells us that emotional memory is ever present. So that is why sometimes we have a vague sadness or feelings that we're not sure where they come from. It's because they're coming from a very distant past. And it's a call, again, from our own soul, from our own being to address those issues. But what ends up happening is we end up staying stuck oftentimes in those emotions of like feeling bad instead of thinking about what I can do to help myself feel better and how I can help others. Yeah.
Okay, good points. Thank you. And from the U.S. Spiritist Federation, are there any favorite movements that you recommend or are favorites of those you know?
Yes, there are. I love this question. I loved all the other questions too. Someone once gave me great advice and said, stretching, just sitting in your chair and stretching, especially if you're not feeling well emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever, to stretch is really important and it's very helpful to move energy. So it could be something super simple, just like stretching out your arms. And, I know many yoga poses, so you can do like tree pose or just any other kind of movement, but just move. And that's, yeah, some of my favorites are those. Super helpful.
That's a nice one. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you, Kirsten, and a heartfelt thanks to everyone who joined us for today's live talk and to those who regularly follow our weekly Spiritism Talk series. Your continued engagement is truly appreciated. We invite you to join us next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for our next live session, where some guy named Peter Hayes will be exploring the topic, the prayer of St. Francis. We look forward to having you with us. Kirsten, before we close, could you please share any final remarks and also do a closing prayer, please?
Yes, thank you. Um, Final remarks: be good to yourself, be forgiving, and be compassionate for others. With that thought in mind, in gratitude to our Creator, in gratitude to the United States Spiritist Federation for this opportunity to serve, in gratitude for our lives, for these teachings, we thank you, God. We ask for your continued strength, for patience and resignation, to endure any and all challenges we experience. May each one of us be able to reframe these challenges and experiences as merely opportunities of growth and not opportunities of sadness. We pray for our world, for the countries, for the cities across our nations. We pray for peace and love to fall upon our leaders and all of us. Dear Jesus, we thank you for the blessings of your teachings, and may we hold them close to our hearts always. And so be it. Amen.